today's morning session will be a worthy addition to the series of very beneficial dialogues that we had during the last 2 days. I won't take much time and reserve my comments for the chairperson's remarks at the end. As we have extended our session with the concurrence of Professor Sangeet Ragi by about 15 minutes, we will conclude by 11:15 instead of 11 a.m. I would request both the presenters to restrict their remarks to about 25 minutes each. We will follow it up with question answer session, and then I will have my chairperson's remarks at the conclusion of this session. May I request first Professor Nirja Gupta ji to kindly present her paper. Over to you, Nirja ji.
A very good morning, Sadar Namaste. The chairperson of this session and a good friend, Professor Amit Dholakia, the co-panelist, Professor Kundan Singh ji, a very, very distinguished audience whom normally we watch on TV, including them, and dear friends, dear scholars. First of all, it's a privilege to be here. Thank you so much for making me a part of this wonderful event, which I am sure has triggered, or maybe, as you said, revisit, have given you ample opportunities to go back and see the portions which we can revisit. Those who don't live in Delhi, for them Delhi is a center. And when Delhi does something at the university, that means some gravity. And with that seriousness, I would start with my session. Because when we say revisit the idea of India, it's a huge topic. And what do we revisit? What is there to revisit? Because the first question is, have we visited ever? Have we really visited ample? Have we really gone to them which were actually being ignored, being shadowed, being hidden, or maybe being neglected? Are we ready enough to visit? Then only we should talk about revisiting. So what are those things? And we must understand whether it is Department of Political Science, whether it is Department of History or Sociology or English or Sanskrit, we cannot live in islands. We are not islands. We can't say this much belongs to my subject and this goes beyond my subject. So when I talk of Raj Tarangini, I don't find any department teaching it. Why? It is in Sanskrit, so why should political science, English, history, philosophy teach it? We don't teach Sanskrit. You go to Sanskrit department and they say, oh, this is a book of history. Why, what does it have to teach in the department of Sanskrit? So ultimately, Kalhan's Raj Tarangini remains just a UPSC question, who wrote Raj Tarangini, or where was it written, or who wrote the history of, what are we doing? Another book, Surya Siddhantika, again the same narrative. It's written in Sanskrit, okay, but we have translated copies. What we have to do with astronomical things? This is Khagol Shastra. Humanities don't teach Khagol Shastra, but dear friends, we do teach history. And when Newton comes to India 17 times and searches that what theory I am going to propagate, are the Indians going to claim later? Then he doesn't find any Indian to claim on that theory, because that theory is written in 5th century, Surya Siddhantika, and fortunately we don't read Surya Siddhantika because it's in Sanskrit. So what are we doing? Are we only revisiting the governance theories? Are we only revisiting those names who governed India and bashing only the names? Or are we revisiting our habits? Are we revisiting our necessities? Are we revisiting our choices and then establishing that yes, idea of India is perennial, it is Sanatan, it is in continuation. So my idea of revisiting is there are 6 points we have to revisit. It is rightly said, Granth, Bhasha, Nadiyan, Gufa, Kala or Kile. These are the 6 points which create the cultures of the country. These scriptures. If we don't go to scriptures, we are not moving or traveling along with the nation as a history. I give you an example. In Rig Veda they talk about 4 directions, Chahur Disha, Chatur Disha. But in Bhagavad Gita they talk about 64 directions. Have we ever traveled when this 4 became 64? Because we have documented all from 4 to 8 to 16 to 64. But do we know where is this development? Because we have not become the part of development of our scientific discovery which our scriptures have well documented. Don't trust on Western declamations. They say you don't have any research methodology. Then how do we have SWOT analysis in Gita? How do we find out our adhisthanam karta cha karanam vivid prayogascha cheshtayam daivam cha panj karanam? It's exactly the SWOT theory what MBA institutes teach you, that where lies the strength, where lies the weaknesses, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities. But we claim that Sanskrit is a regressive or dead language, or it has to be taught. It's very difficult, so we can't even read in translations. Well, we can read in translations Aristotle and Plato and everyone because they are in translations, but Sanskrit in translation, it's sin. We cannot read Sanskrit in translation. I'm sorry for being rude, because it's the anger, because it's the depression, because it's the restlessness. If not you, then who? This young generation must stand with questions, so many of them, that the professor who is teaching back has to quote you again and again that if you want to revisit, please read at least 3 scriptures. First, Raj Tarangini. It teaches us how to be a narrative in methodology. It's a documented history of India, because we know Ashok, we know Samrat Ashok, but do we know Lalitaditya? Okay, we have heard his name, but what was the contribution? And the contribution is that Lalitaditya, the Kashmiri king, reigned from Mesopotamia to Kerala, from almost Iran to Burma, and maybe beyond that, and that is documented with the era, with the names, with the types of 11 capitals of Kashmir, 11 capitals. One of them was also made by Samrat Ashok, Srinagari, which is not Srinagar of the day. Do we know there were gold digging ants? The ants which would go down in Ladakh and bring out the gold. And we have a monastery called Hamis. Hamis in Sanskrit means swarn. And that Hamis monastery is to be said that it has been made with the same gold as the ants would bring out from the earth. If we don't have our metallurgical sciences, if that is not known to the kings, how we were digging, how we were training the ants to bring out the gold, and then we could collect them, purify them and create a monastery. So we are missing a lot. My main contention today is we are missing a lot. If we are just revisiting only the theories and the rulers and the linear history, then please don't waste your time. It's already there in the books. We don't need any other repetition of the same. Unless and until we do some contribution. The second text we have to read is Surya Siddhantika. Surya Siddhantika tells us about possibly all theories that have been claimed later by the West. and given their names, sometimes by Galileo, sometimes by Newton, sometimes by Watson. What you have watts, 40 watt bulb or 100 watt bulb, the watt, the scientist, everything is borrowed. And when my young scholars ask me the question, okay, we trust you, they have borrowed, where lies the documentation? Then dear friend, Surya Siddhantika is the documentation. Read it. There is a small shloka. See how many theories have been borrowed from that one shloka. We say, okay, we were the first who said sun is the center of this universe. And then there is a shloka, Rathasya Chakra Ekam. Rathasya, Rath, Surya ka Rath. And we say there are 12 horses. What are these 12 horses? These 12 horses are the 12 signs, Rashiyan, 12 Rashiyan. Rathasya Chakra Ekam. Sapt Turgah. Turg is color, Rang. Sapt Turgas, 7 prisms of light. Remember in 16th to 18th century, all these sciences we have already gifted to the West. 5th century Surya Siddhantika says, Rathasya Chakra Ekam Sapt Turgah Surya Rashamyaha Bhujangamev Gamayanti. Light is not linear. They move like the snake, and it's already there, documented. Around 10 years back, a German scientist won a Nobel Prize for physics on sound engineering, and he said, okay, whatever we speak, it doesn't die. If you collect everything and then arrange it on a platter on the same frequency, you can rehear, you can revisit, you can actually hear what was spoken. And he got a Nobel Prize. But हम तो सदियों से अक्षर कहते हैं, पता नहीं कब से अक्षर कहते हैं. We say अक्षर, doesn't die. Even in Rigveda, akshar is mentioned. So someone before Rigveda had already done this research that it doesn't die. In the Shanti Parv of Mahabharata, Bhishma is lying on Sharshaya, and when he is about to depart, he asks Krishna that Krishna, please show me the Vishwaroop. And when Krishna comes with the Vishwaroop, Bhishma narrates so many beautiful words in his stuti. And after he finishes, everyone was there. Kauravas were there, Pandavas were there, everyone was there. They regret, oh God, what we have done. He was speaking such elated words for Krishna, we have not recorded them. And at that time, Sahadev collects all the sounds from the universe, makes them a particular frequency, rehear words, and that's how Vishnu Sahasranam is created. Vishnu Sahasranam we do recite even today. What documentation we want? There are hundreds and thousands of documentation. We whom we call ourselves teacher, you whom you call yourself a scholar, can't visit our own scriptures, that is Indian, that is Bharatiya. Just because the West puts question, just because West says, oh, how can Draupadi be born out of fire? Why? For anyone who takes birth on Dharti, we need a biological body. But not all Janma can be biological. For all births, we don't need body because we have 5 tattvas. And each tattva will have its own form of taking birth. And Mahabharata recites each and every form of birth. It's not our fault if West has not decoded that. Mahabharata has already said. There is Agni Putri, Yagya Putri. There is Jal Putra, Ganga Putra. There is Vayu Putra, Hanuman. There is Akashiya Putra, Sahadev and Nakul, and Dharti Putra, we all. So they already talk about it. What I am saying, what we have to revisit is our own theories which are there with the pramanas. The West speaks only of one praman, and that is Pratyaksh praman. Pratyaksh means what we can sense with our 5 senses. But our Nyaya Sutra says there are 6 types of pramanas, and West has validated that. Sambhav is also a praman. If Sambhav is not accepted by West, how do we create hypothesis? Anuman is also a praman. if we are not validating Anuman, how do we declare an hypothesis to be null and void? Shabd is also a praman. Ittih is also a praman. So we have to trust what is being written, and if you want to check, then check yourself. Don't rest on West that they will check. Some they say they will tell, okay, this portion is right for you, and then we start believing, okay, this portion is right. So then it will happen that now Nobel Prize will be taken away by German, and then our Mahabharat will again lie in the cupboard because it talks in a language which me and you we don't read. Coming to the Swa. What is the difference between our independence struggle and the others? They claim that we were never a state. Well, politically you might be right, but culturally, but then they negate cultural nationalism. But then what was the spirit that bound us together? And we know out of more than 500 states, around 283, if I'm right, I'm very poor in numbers, so I don't remember exact number, but somewhere around 250, the states never became slaves of Britishers. They had an MOU, and under the MOU only the defense, the money, and I think the international trade were given to Britishers, but they were the sovereign states. So when Britishers left India, they had to come in MOU with that power, which power was given by Britishers to Indians. So they were never ever slaved, and among them many more states were covered, and the biggest state was Hyderabad, and second biggest state was Kashmir, and the king of Kashmir was the Janendra. Janendra is the king of Mandalas. This Mandal was those 250 states who never surrendered to British, and king of Kashmir, who at the 47 was Maharaja Hari Singh, he was the Adhyaksh of that Mandala. We don't even go to the nearest history. Forget about the Vedic Kal or Badh Kal, and after that whatever comes in. So when as a scholar we stand and talk, we have to understand that for us it was not a battle for political freedom. Otherwise Gandhi wouldn't have written Hind Swaraj first in Gujarati with the title Hind Suraj. And then when he translated into English, he changed the word from Suraj to Swaraj. And both the editions are available from Gandhi. And we can see the difference. The difference lies is only in preface, nothing else. But if we read the preface, we would understand what Gandhi was reacting to. Because in 1905, the first experiment of Hindu-Muslim was done by Britishers. We talk of 1905, but we don't talk of 1911, when they had to take back that Bang Bhang, and India was again, like the states were again united. So the Swa, though it sounds very much cultural, but it is the base of our idea of India, and that is the reason that Maharaja Kuka also starts a revolution in Punjab. He was a dharmic guru. There were so many dharmic gurus who took part in our freedom for a struggle. And freedom for a struggle doesn't mean always opposing the policies, governance. Freedom of a struggle means anywhere you hit their own beliefs and customs and traditions, they would stand for it. So in some portion Janjati was standing up, in some portion Dharma Gurus were standing up, in some portion they were going overseas like Swami Vivekananda, and some portions they were starting a revolution from the grassroots. But a beautiful amalgamation. Now the third text I would request you to visit is Gita Sar by Tilak. It's a commentary on Gita, but wonderful commentary with a contemporary bhashya over it, with the contemporary thought and a constant comparison with Marxism, with utilitarianism, with other political theories, what Tilak does. So then we understand what is important when we come down to culture and what a public Ganesh Utsav can do and what a public Durga Puja can do and what a public Navratra can do. These are all political messages. Here lies the amalgamation of the cultural nationalism with the political independence. What was the problem? I would just sum up in 2 minutes. The problem lied that after 1947, we had to reconstruct our identity, which we did not. We continued with the identity which was given by British. Therefore, English remained supreme. Therefore, Western texts remained supreme. Therefore, other seats of learning which were granted grantinage, they remained supreme, and Swa lost its own identity. In 1811, the Gazetteer says there were more than 70 lakh education institutions in India. In Macaulay Minutes, it's already been decoded that not even a single person was illiterate in India. And when we say 100% literacy, it includes women. The most harm done to India was with these so-called social reforms in 18th and 19th centuries, which were fake. There was no sati pratha. Go back to your families and bring me one name from the family who became sati. It was only a concocted theory to say that you are so regressive. There might be 1 or 2 cases, but that becomes pratha. So there was no sati pratha. Bal Vivaha. Are we talking of Bal Vivaha? We had 25 years of Brahmacharya. Where was the Vivaha? But, and 100% literacy means women also. They were actually studying. Today we are fighting for GER. They very, very consciously gave 2 diktats. The first is, we'll give you money, you close down your schools and you start granted schools, so government will give you money, and everyone was lured by that. And the second diktat was, you can't teach Indian languages. The moment we remove Indian languages from the education system, we became regressive. Because their idea was only to create Naukar, Sarkari Naukar, who can help them in the governance, not for learning. Today, we are fighting for that Swa in education. We have to go back to that Swa. We don't want governments to run education. Why should government run the education? The teachers are there. We had a parampara of Gurukul. Gurus were supreme. Today, if you ask who is the center of education, they say student. A student is there in the Sharan of Guru, but Gurus themselves have made them a subaltern. What to do? So there are many things to revisit. I know the topic is very heavy and the time is very less. I think I have done justice within the given time. Thank you so much for inviting me again. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Nirja ji, for this very passionate lecture of yours. Her plea to sake of our collective and selective amnesia with regard to our own past